Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, according to your time. We will be talking about our talk today. It's the impact of anthropogenic climate change on Egyptian livestock production. My name is Amira Abd El-Moneum Goma Ahmed, Assistant Professor of Animal and Poultry Behavior and Management, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Alexandria University. First, we'll talk on different topics, including introduction of background. Second, the climate profile of Egypt. Third, I will be talking on the estimates of climate change in Egypt and the impact of this climate change on the livestock production in Egypt, and also the Egyptian proposed mitigation and adaptation actions for this climate change. And lastly, will be a concluding and recommendation. First, what's climate? Climate of a region is its typical or average weather pattern. Any change could be attributed directly or indirectly to human activity. It could alter the composition of global atmosphere in addition to the climate variation during the period of time. Recently, there are a lot of climate extremes that occurred in both magnitude and frequency with increase further in the future. The Mediterranean ecological systems are being drastically affected by climate change. This climate change was found to be a harmful effect to have a harmful effect on animals, welfare and production, which are expected to be increasing in the future. Egyptian economy depends in part on livestock production for its income and food security. Food safety and security are key priorities in the coming century with the population increment. The demand for food production is increasing for food security and safety, together with the population increment, especially in that of animal origin, which is a constraint or challenge for developing countries like Egypt. This figure clears the interaction between climate change and livestock production and food safety, in which this change interact with the energy, water, and land resources and population growth, which reflected on food security, food safety, and also impact on livestock, food supply, and forage production for this livestock. Also will be have an effect on energy production, clean water production, and all of this interact together to affect on livestock production. Tropical and subtropical countries will face obstacles and constraints in the coming century in animal production because of climate change. Why this occur? Because uh, in the developing countries, they are relying on traditional systems of grazing than an intensive animal production. Under traditional systems of grazing, the animals are affected by the solar radiation and the high temperature, so they are more affected by the climate change. This is a picture for traditional grazing systems of livestock in developing countries like Egypt, with just a shed or just uh, leaving them grazing on land without any protection from solar radiation or from high temperature and humidity. In reverse, there is an intensive animal production system which is little present in these developing countries, like this shed or housed animals in the pictures. Climate profile of Egypt. Egypt is one of the countries that are most exposed to climate change. It's considered the 15th from the most valuable country exposed to human-induced environmental change. The climate profile of Egypt is characterized by warm days and cold nights. There are two main seasons, which are mild winter from November to April and hot summer from May to October. The average temperature in the coastal area would be 14-degree minimum in winter and 30-degree maximum in summer. In this picture, it's clear the annual mean air temperature in different areas of Egypt. It's 22 degree in the coastal areas and reaching to 28 to 30 degree or more in the southern eastern corner. This also clears the difference in annual mean air temperature for Egypt in different regions. We will see the color for dark brown, it's over 25 degree, which is in the desert area or the upper Egypt. This figure also clears the change in temperature over the period from 2000 to 2020 in Egypt, which is fluctuating and reaching a high level in 2010. This 2010 there was a heat wave, and also in 2007 there was a heat wave, and and 2020 also there is a heat wave, and expected these heat waves to be or extremes to be increasing. Solar radiation in Egypt is 4,500 kg per meter square during the entire year, with its extremes during the summer, together with a higher humidity from 50 to 75% in the coastal areas and low humidity in the desert areas, which make farm animals raised under this climate change is under stress over a period from 5 to 6 months a year, which can suffer them which can lead them to suffer from impairment in their health, production, and reproduction. The estimate for change is 1.4 to 5.6 increase in the average global surface temperature during the 21st century by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The Mediterranean Africa is expected more likely to be warm and dry. The average annual temperature predicted increase in Egypt is 1.07 to 1.27 by the 2030. Also, the Egyptian Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation Climate Change Adaptation Strategy anticipated a temperature increase by 1 degree centigrade by the 2025, which is already been happening in this century. By the 2050, and also temperature predicted increase to be by 1.64 to 2.33. And by the 2060, it anticipated average temperature increase to be 4 degrees more at Cairo and 3.1 to 4.7 in other areas of Egypt. This increase is expected to be more in summer, so there will be number of more hot days and less number of cool days. Also, by the 21st century, it is expected an increase of an average 5.6 degree under a high emission scenario, with the more warm days about 195 days. Also, in the period from 2081 to 21, a predicted increase is between 0.3 to 4.8 degree. For the 2090, the maximum temperature is expected to increase between 2 to 5.6 degrees centigrade. This increase impacts livestock production. Livestock production contributes to the national economy of the North African region countries, including Egypt. During the 40 years from 1970 to 2010, there is an increase in the number of livestock from 186 million to 412 million head. Livestock production in Egypt is mainly done by small-scale farmers. Only the government farmers contribute to less than 2% of this production. This graph explains the increase in the livestock production over the 40 years from 1917 to 2010 in livestock production to cover the population increase. Buffalo population is expected to increase also to 4.2 ahead in 2013 and 3.5 million head in 2016. Although of this, the human population was about 104 million in 2017 and reached to 120 million by 2020 and expected to increase to 151 million in 2050. This increase in livestock is not adequate for the requirement of the increased population. This figure clears the Egyptian total meat production from poultry and main livestock production like buffalo, cattle, sheep, and chicken From the period from 2013 to 2019, you notice the increase in livestock production, then a drop, then and a higher increase again. Climate change impact on livestock is influenced by the ability of the animal to exchange its heat with the environment. If the animal lacks the ability to dissipate its environmental heat, they will suffer from heat stress. This figure creates the impact of climate change on livestock production like growth. There will be a decrease in body weight, body condition score, a daily gain, feed intake, feed conversion efficiency, and also in milk producing animals, there will decrease in milk production, milk quality, and milk composition. Also will affect reproduction like estrus expression, fertilization conception rate, also affect the animal health, adaptation, increase in respiratory rate, increase in rectal temperature, increase in cortisol, and also increase in water intake. This will lead also to in more instances of diseases like Rift Valley fever, bovine viral diarrhea, and rinderpest. This negative impact on livestock production also extends to poultry production. This figure also clears the impact of higher temperature lead to higher body temperature in a chicken as either broiler or laying chicken, which lead to a decrease in egg production and egg quality and egg weight, even in the body weight of broiler ones. Livestock species maintain their body temperature between 10 and 30 degrees centigrade. Above this will be a reduction in milk production and feed intake in cattle. In the Mediterranean climate, it was reported that every unit increase in the temperature humidity index above 69 will reduce milk production by 0.41 kg per day. This not only a decrease in milk production, also but decrease in milk composition. Like colostrum and immunoglobulins transferred to colostrum will be reduced under heat stress near the calving time. Also, the higher yielding cows will be more sensitive or more expected to heat stress or more exposed to heat stress than low yielding ones, which due to its increased feed intake. The area to propose mitigation and adaptation actions include a decade ago a national strategy of three main components to cover this climate change, like increasing the visibility of the Egyptian community in dealing with climate change, enhancing the capacity to absorb climate-related disasters and risk, reduction of climate change-related disasters. Also, in 2016, the Egyptian national strategy aimed to increase livestock production with an adaptation to climate change through matching stocking density increase with greater crop production, rotating pasture, modifying grazing time to cooler part of the day. Also, improve low productivity cattle through better feeding programs. In addition to this, there is environmental modification, including use shelter cooling system to prevent solar heat load and increase animals' heat loss. National nutritional modification also include fibrolytic enzyme supplementation. Also, animal selection and breeding must consider the conflict between adapted endogenous low-producing animals and exogenous high-producing animals and less tolerant. The high-producing animal require more grain feeding while the population is growing more and the food security is declining, which is an obstacle and constraint for developing countries. This feed gap reduction can be closed through different adaptation options, including avoid feeding berseem clover alone and combine with low protein feeding like silage to avoid wastage of protein, and also it's considered a significant detoxification cost in ruminant livestock. Also, arrange land improvement, crop residue use, hydroponic barley feeding, saline water utilization for crop production, and also livestock integration in the urban farming system to utilize manure. In addition to this, the Egyptian population must rely on alternative sources of food security, such as plant-based proteins and meat grown in laboratories in vitro. But the higher cost of production is currently a barrier to widespread this adoption. For a conclusion or recommendation for this condition, it's clear that the Egyptian livestock production is facing a severe challenge with the predicted temperature increase unless there is an appropriate mitigation. This mitigation includes an alternative high-value food such as clean meat and reduced plant proteins is needed to be introduced. Also, re-education of the Egyptian population about the value of the alternatives to livestock in their diet. Provision of assistance for Egyptian livestock farmers. A reduction in ruminant livestock use for food production as ruminant also contribute to the predicted temperature increase. Thanks for your audience and happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you. Goodbye.